Train drill. This is something that our guys like doing. This is something that put them under the chute, really work their combos. So I have two guys under the sled, under the chute. So yeah, a guy working. Someone's the post, someone's the driver here. So driver, post. Then I have another guy, another offensive lineman standing behind him, leveraging him, so it makes it harder on a double team. So I got two guys. I got him holding the guy in there, so it makes them drive their feet. So really work on driving the physical block, make sure they're driving their feet, and getting the double team moving, getting them out of there, getting them run out of there. So here you can kind of see, so it's a two whistle drill, starting them. He's really trying to anchor down in there, trying not to let him move the first guy that's in the double team. Second whistle, he's going to escape out of there. They got to really work on running their hips and their feet. By moving this guy here, it makes them really, if they don't run their hips and their feet, they're going to fall over flat on their face. Got to make sure that they're running their hips and their feet, maintaining that block through, playing with leverage. Here you can kind of see it getting set up. The guys are getting in there, working the double team. One's going to be the post, one's going to be the driver on the double team. They get anchored in there, good body position, good base. Trying to drive our feet. Another form of basically using the sled on the double team. Kind of gives us that leverage of it's not going to be easy to push this guy out of here. Gives us some extra weight, gets us training our legs to keep driving if we can't get any movement. Keep driving our legs. Hold them in there, and then it makes them run their feet at the end so they can move the double team even more. Here on the goal line, example of when this is used the most is really working on driving this double team here. They really don't get much movement on it. Got to really, this is where we need to, watching this. After this, on Tuesday, we would go under the chute and we would drive this guy out of there probably for 10 minutes of practice. Really working on our leg drive. Our center does a bad job here of not driving his feet. Got to get movement on this double team. Create that gap inside. We end up scoring on this play, but this is pretty lackluster. This is where that strain drill really comes into place, especially on the goal line when they're playing really low, playing with really good leverage. Got to make sure we have good pad level and really work on driving our feet out of there, getting movement. Quarterback got voted the worst celebrator on the team. We gave him so much shit for bad celebrations throughout the year that eventually came a point where like 4th or 5th game of the year that he just all of a sudden just whenever we scored, he tried to do the stupidest stuff on film just because we know we were asking him about it. So you can probably see it. I think you catch a little bit of it here at the end. But Nate Juliak is a senior for us. Had a really good year. You can see how he celebrates. So he enjoyed getting harassed the next day after film.
Good thing you get harassed about.
Yes, it sure is, isn't it, Cody? Offensively, we had a pretty good year. We averaged over 30 points a game. Offensive line-wise, we only gave up 6 sacks in 10 games. So, led the WIAC conference this year. I know our guys are pretty proud of that, weren't you, Cody?
Oh, yeah.
So, take pride in that. But here, just working our double team combos again. Really working on driving our feet out of there. Here, I definitely think we can play a little bit more pad level here. Our left guard does a really nice job. He actually does too much of a job and gets a nice piece of our center here and throws him out of the way. Need to work on his aiming point a little bit, not punching his body. But definitely think you can play a little bit lower pad level, right, Cody? Get that guy moving out of there. Do a decent job here. This is the freshman in there again. Do a decent job staying on the block and driving them. I like to see them stay tighter together though. That's one thing on the strain drill is really working that hip to hip, making sure that they don't get moved out of make sure that they don't get split. We do a lot of outside zone as well, so I'm sure you guys do a lot of this drill as well. But reach the reacher, reach drill, working against each other. Both guys are going against each other. One guy is not just a dummy. Both guys are doing the reach drill, really working the technique. So we're getting double the reps here at every station. On this, really working what, Cody?
First step, really.
First step, getting it in the ground. Make sure we're not losing ground on the step. Make sure we're gaining ground on that first step. Really working on throwing our far hand to the far number and then pulling them with our inside hand. So I'm going to throw this hand to the far number and then twist and really get our hips around. That's one thing in this drill that this kid does a really good job of, is getting his hips around there at the end. Really making sure that I got control here. I'm pulling them. As I'm pulling them with my inside hand, I'm getting my hip around and I'm controlling that block and I set the edge on it. Here it is again, different rep. Really does a good job. It's hard when there's no shoulder pads on, but he does a really good job of really trying to throw that hip across and really try and control that block. Do it with the fullbacks as well, outside zone, but really working on straining, really working on throwing that hip through, working on gaining ground with that first step. Does a nice job sealing that guy off. Works on throwing that far hand to that far shoulder. Seals it off. One thing that I know our guys struggle with a little bit is when they're stepping, they end up crossing over, and if they get bad timing on it, and they have that crossover step, they get off balance. So one thing I try and have our guys do, especially during the drill, is throwing, shuffling around it instead of crossing over. Because in that crossover step, a lot of our guys have gotten caught where they get pushed into the chest, and then they lose balance on it, and then they end up falling back into the play. So here, they do it, they cross over a little bit, I don't mind it as long as they're quick about it. I don't want to have big crossover steps like this. If it's just a quick here, just so we can shuffle back through, that's one thing that I'm looking for on this drill. He does a really nice job setting the edge on that. And then Cody, right tackle, he doesn't get him reached. One of the things then, the next part of the drill, if you don't get him reached, because you're not always going to get him reached, is what? You got to drive him to the sideline. Get him out of there, run him out of there. Got him, don't feel like you can't hook him, get him out of there. The next guy's going to set the edge on him. Here, tight end does a decent job. Like to see him maybe help the tackle out a little bit more on it. But he does a nice job. Somebody's going to end up sealing it off. So if you end up widening that guy out, the next guy, hopefully your buddy seals it off. The tailback's going to hit the next vertical seam that he has. Good job on his first step. Short in the ground, does a decent job. Next here on not crossing over too much, getting the steps back in the ground so we can play with leverage. Does a nice job shutting it off, creating that gap on the outside. Ran a lot of outside zone this game here. As you can see, nice job by both those guys, sealing those guys off. Put a little bit of a wrinkle in our outside zone game as well. This is a nice play for us. Center does a nice job of reaching. Tackle does a nice job of reaching here. Really does a nice job of throwing his hand across and then drilling his hips around. That's what we're looking for out of the drill.